What's up, everybody? How are you doing? You can do better than that. That's kind of lame for like 3 or whatever. Anyway, good to see you guys. I know it's London. This is about as enthusiastic as it gets. I'm kidding. So here to talk about what I call the Great Reset that's happening right now. Not just in data specifically. I know the talk is about reset in data engineering, but I think kind of more broadly. Who kind of feels like the table has been turned on what they thought that their work has been up to now? A few people? Yeah, actually a lot of people. I'll tell you a story, actually. The other day I was in Scottsdale, Arizona on what we call a 10-minute trip in a Waymo. Who's heard of a Waymo? Right, it's a driverless cab, right? So they have them there. It's pretty cool. So a driverless cab, and I'm talking to Claude. Who's heard of Claude, the AI thing, right? So using Claude and creating an app that I deployed to GitHub while I was in a Waymo for a 10-minute drive. Now think about that for a sec. If you were to say 5 years ago that you would be in a driverless car writing an app on your phone and you could deploy it to GitHub, who would have believed that would have been possible? Using, it's a weird idea, right? So, but here we are today, and I feel like, a lot of us are experimenting. We're kind of collectively staring off into the void of what's next, right? And I don't think any of us has a clear idea of what's happening, and that's part of what we'll be talking about today. But it's like, I feel this is like a very magical period. I don't know where the hell any of this goes. I really don't. But sitting in that car the other day, I was like, this is like magical. I'm on my phone, making an app, a full app, right? It's cool. So let's talk about this real quick. Let's talk about sort of the past, present, and future, not just of data engineering. I'll talk mostly about data engineering, but of data in general, right? So historically, data engineering. Who's a data engineer, by the way, just so I can kind of get a hand, show of people. So a lot of people here. Who works in data? I guess if you're not here and you work in, if you're here and you don't work in data, that'd be kind of weird, but welcome. We're a very accepting crowd. But historically, data engineering has been about moving data from maybe point A to B or point A to Z, right? We work with the business on solving data problems. Sometimes we don't. That also happens. And the whole trope is about, like, let's get value from data. Who's heard that term before? That we need to work more closely with the business in order to get more value from our data. Who's kind of tired of hearing that, by the way? Everybody. Yes, me too. I gave a whole talk. I've been giving lots of talks about that. I think it's a kind of a trite thing, but here we are. And we've been doing a lot of the same stuff for decades and expecting different results, right? We'll talk more about this in a bit. But it's, the common work that we do, right? It's either what I call, we work in two categories, really. Enterprise land, which is legacy. I wouldn't say legacy, but it's more internal-facing data work, right? So we're making dashboards, we're making reports for internal stakeholders. That's enterprise land, right? Typically, you work with IT. Typically, you're a cost center. Now, there's product land. Product land is where you work on user-facing products. And this is usually tied to revenue, right? If you're in enterprise land, it's typically hard to tie your activities to an ROI. This goes back to the value of data argument. Like, how do you measure that? I guess it's kind of like measuring the ROI of putting on your socks in the morning. Like, you do it because you should, but you can't calculate it. But that's a lot of what IT work feels like and a lot of data work feels like. In product land, it's very, it's much easier to calculate. You do something, user engages with it, and so forth. And so data is the product in this case, right? And that's sort of the data product argument and so forth. But it's sort of the same as it ever was, right? Who feels kind of tired of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? We've been going to this conference for years, this one in particular, and it's all the same, a lot of the same arguments, right? Let's find faster ways of getting data from point A to B, but we haven't solved central problems. We haven't really rethought what we're doing. I think this talk will hopefully inspire you to think maybe a bit outside that box there. So what doesn't change? So the data engineering lifecycle, who's familiar with that? I wrote a book on data engineering a few years ago. So the data engineering lifecycle basically describes the phases of what we all do here. getting data from some source system. It could be an API, it could be a database, it could be files, whatever. Storing it, doing something to it, ingesting it, storing it, transforming it, modeling it, serving it, right, to downstream use cases. It's analytics, reports, machine learning, AI, reverse ETL, and so forth, right? That doesn't go away, I don't think, even in the age of AI. I think the systems maybe change a bit, but I don't think that goes away. The fundamentals don't. I've heard some people say like data engineering dies because AI is here. I actually think data engineering becomes a lot more useful. It does change, though. We'll talk more about that. Data modeling. Who models data? Who loves doing that? Right. So I think that AI can help here, and we'll talk more about that. We'll talk about some of the fundamentals. Data modeling doesn't go anywhere. And in fact, it's more important than ever because you're going to have to use agents to query a lot of this data under the hood. If your data model sucks, it's kind of those mess around and find out moments. I talked about it for the last two Big Data London talks that I gave about data modeling. Excuse me. So data is still hard. Our data model sucks. And data management and governance is still sort of stuck in a rut for decades and so forth. Everything is just still difficult, right? So we've been talking about this number, 80% failure rate, or 95%, I guess, in the case of generative AI now. But success rates are not high, right? And AI tool adoption is interesting. Does anybody know how much BI tools are typically adopted, and data tools in general in an organization? Anyone want to take a guess at a number, a percentage? 25%, I think, is a going rate for tool adoption. So people don't use the tools that we bring in. That's great. Most projects fail. Who's seen that 95% failure study that came out of MIT about how 95% of generative AI projects fail? Yeah. I thought that was interesting. I thought it was a bit of an abused number, too, because it started talking. I think people looked at the headline, they're like, oh, generative AI is like totally worthless because everything fails. But if you look underneath the hood, most people are using generative AI at work, actually. They're just using, but the implementations themselves fail for a lot of the classic reasons that IT projects fail. Bad data, organizational training is a big one, as well as the models right now. They don't have the context, they don't have the memory to work in an enterprise, right? So all the above. It's interesting. Who uses generative AI? Like, who may bring their own AI into work and just use that? You can blink twice if you want to. But I think most studies I've seen is like overwhelmingly everyone's bringing AI into the workplace, right? So it's not to say that AI doesn't work. It just means your company's AI probably sucks, and they're forcing you to use some kind of dog shit AI model that they built that's like not as good as a state-of-the-art model. So, but it's here, and everyone's using it now. I know in America, where I come from, everyone's using generative AI, right? So it is what it is. But again, same as it ever was. Right? We're still fighting the same battles. We're fighting yesterday's battles. The last few years have been big data, modern data stack, whatever the hell you call this new data stack. I think I call it the postmodern data stack because it like hallucinates, and so that kind of fits with the postmodernist theme of irrational behavior. But what does change, right? I think let's talk about what changes now. Does anyone have any ideas of what changes that you want to maybe throw out there real quick? No? No? I have some ideas. So I feel like right now we're in the Wild West once again. Who was around for the internet explosion back in the day? A few people. Wasn't that fun? I feel like we're here again, right? So I call this the Great Reset. I feel like when I talk to practitioners and experts around the world, in data and AI and so forth, even people who are very close to AI, like some of the founding team at OpenAI, nobody seems to know where this goes. I was actually doing an upcoming podcast with the guy Tyler Akido. So he created a lot of the streaming systems at companies like Google, and I think it was Snowflake's streaming expert. Now he's at Red Panda. But he did a good job. The thing I thought was interesting about this podcast is you have one of the world's foremost streaming experts who's using AI. And when I asked him, what do you think is next? He's like, I have no idea. Right? I thought that was interesting because he's having to use this stuff and try and rework his mindset into this new paradigm. So I thought that was very, very fascinating to see. Because sometimes when I talk to a lot of experts, they kind of they're very rigid in their thinking, right? And they don't want to change. But I'm starting to see more and more people adopting, AI for coding. Who uses AI for coding, by the way? Like everybody, right? Who doesn't actually? Let me see. That's an easier one. Who doesn't use AI for coding? You can raise your hand and not feel shamed. Chris Tab, he doesn't, and Ava Maya, they're Amish. But no, everyone's using it, right? And so the cool thing with these tools is, you've had, typically it was the ask mode, and it would just kind of make code for you, but now you have agent mode. Who uses agent mode in a code? Kind of get a show of hands. So it'll just do a lot of the workflows for you, and it's changing a lot of how I work, for instance. I'm pretty amazed, actually, because I feel like I'm just hitting return, all the time. And then, looking at the code once in a while, having to go back and review it. But I usually have Cloud Code running all the time until it taps out, right? Because I pay for it, so I'm like, I may as well just have it just run. Why not? And so, but I think the interfaces are really fascinating because I'm used to working in the IDE. I didn't like VS Code when it came out because I felt like it was very, it felt kind of kludgy. But once they had the AI in that, I think that kind of changed it a bit. And that's when Cursor and GitHub Copilot came out. But Cloud Code, I think, really changed it for me when I could just work in the terminal and start writing code. Well, hitting return and having it write code, more to the point. And so that caused a big rethink for me. What does this mean for, for data and for data engineering? And I think that this is a topic that we're all trying to figure out because now, what do we do exactly? Are we just here to review code? I'll give you an example where this gets a bit unwieldy. So one night, I was vibe coding a JavaScript app. I think in the course of 3 hours, between the dependencies that it installed and the code that it wrote, there were 3.5 million lines of code in 3 hours. Do you really think you're going to be able to review even the source code of that? No, it seems a bit weird, right? So this notion that we're going to be here to review the work of AI, I think is a bit silly. I think more of what I've been doing is having AIs review other AIs' work. And then that becomes a bit of the workflow here. So now fast forward to today, what's happening, right? The talk of the town right now is agents. Who's heard of the term agents in their data work, right? Everybody. And agents are fascinating. I'm having a lot of fun with this. I feel like it's giving me a chance to explore sort of the boundaries of what next generation API workflows feel like. And there's this notion that your data needs to be ready for agents. I don't agree with this, actually. There's this notion that you have to have your data ready for AI. I think this is something that a lot of vendors are peddling, but if you actually use agents are just basically, a lot of it is just tools. I'm going to use this tool here, I'm going to use this tool here. This is back to API programming. This is not much to do with data at all. I would say having good data is table stakes. And this is what I'm going to get back to in a second. We're going to have a back to the future moment. And again, the data is changing. It's not about rows and columns anymore, right? That's one part of it. That's a small part of it. A lot of it's text. A lot of it could be images. A lot of it could be other stuff, right? The other day I was helping a friend with a workflow where it was all PDFs and images, right? This is a pretty small business, but even he's using AI for this kind of stuff now. So it's interesting, right? I'm seeing just broader non-technical people using agents in their day-to-day business, and this is changing the game for a lot of people. I'm seeing just even citizen data engineers, people who are not technical, building apps, building workflows, data-oriented workflows out of their Power BI, all this stuff, and that's crazy to see, right? I didn't have this in my bingo card 5 years ago. That people would just be accessing through a chatbot or through MCP the ability to talk to all their apps and string all the data together. So think about where this is going, right? It's agentic architectures, and we'll talk more about this, but I feel like everything is moving at a very, very, very fast pace. Who feels like they can keep up right now? Anybody? Chris, Tab, he can keep up, right? He's the only guy. He's like superhuman. But no, when I talk to just a lot of my friends who are deep in this stuff, nobody feels like they can keep up anymore. And so, but the cool thing is that the playing field is being leveled. Like I said, when I'm seeing my friends out there, non-technical friends, building data pipelines, right? That's insane. But they don't think it's data pipelines anymore. And I think this is sort of one of the things I want to reinforce is we're also moving, I think, into maybe a post-data, quote-unquote, world, where people are just going to be accessing data and our tools, unbeknownst to them, they're just going to be using it through AI calls. I think that's the other big thing that's going to be changing. And I also made a blog post the other day, the other month, 6 months ago, I think. And I kind of called people out, because there are some people out there who I think are very much what I call AI denialists. They're like, this is like, this is all sucks, and nobody should use this. It's like the work of the devil. It hallucinates, and all this kind of stuff. And I said that AI denialists are basically the flat earthers of the data and tech world. They still very much believe that. So again, the world's moving incredibly fast, right? I think the old ways, at least the fundamentals are going to stay the same. But I think, if you're stuck in the camp that AI isn't going to help your industry, like I see this a lot in, say, data management and governance, for example, where I think they're just very focused on the way that things have been going for the last 30 years. Like that mindset is not going to work today. So the opportunity is in not repeating the same problems over and over again, and again and again and again, like we have for decades. So where are things going, right? I think inevitably, and I think the most obvious one is things are moving a lot faster, right? And I think if you look at, so there's some interesting articles. Who's heard the AI 2027 article, right? The graph is crazy, where it talks about basically, and there's another one, situational awareness, where they talk about this curve, and this curve sort of goes exponential, as you would imagine. But what's interesting is you're starting to see what's happening with AI, and AI is going to start training other AIs, AI experts, and so forth. And so when you think of what that means, that's pretty trippy, right? AIs training other AIs and making other AIs better. I remember Sam Altman at Snowflake Summit, somebody asked him what he would invest his money into. And it was making AI smarter so it can make better AI. So it can make better AI and so forth. So that's one thing where everything is going. This will improve exponentially. I think another thing is what I called a bit ago the postmodern data stack, right? So historically, our data stacks have been deterministic in the sense where you have, I would say some people argue with this term idempotent, but pipelines that do certain things, right? They move data from point A to B in a very predictable, reliable fashion. Now we're dealing with deterministic pipelines as well, where there's a sense of probability as well as determinism in these pipelines. This is a fundamentally different mindset and architecture than we've been working with. This is something you're going to have to get used to, where architectures could be ephemeral. They could be vibe-coded. They may be there, they may be not. They may be rewritten by other AIs. That's pretty trippy, actually. That's way different than what we've been used to as data engineers. I don't think data engineering goes away. The life cycle's there, and the undercurrents as well. The undercurrents of the data engineering life cycle were security, orchestration, architecture, management, software engineering, and architecture, right? So it's like, I don't see a world where those things disappear. It's still there. But I think what we need to account for is it's not just going to be us working in these systems anymore. It's going to be something that's not us. And there's going to be many of them. So I'd say like the things you need to get good at is working with deterministic systems, understanding the fundamentals more than ever. I think it's more important, precisely for the reason you won't even know what good looks like, right? The problem with vibe coding, and this is the original. Actually, it's funny. The original talk was going to be what I called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch of AI slopware, because it was about vibe coding and I think the harm of it. But I realized a couple months ago that I was a bit angry at vibe coding, probably for a good reason, the reasons I still am. But I feel like vibe coding, it's here and it's here to stay. Once I saw my friends using it, my non-technical friends in small businesses, I'm like, it's a cat's out of the bag. This is going to be the norm. People are using AI for all kinds of stuff. It's going to make your life great. It's going to make your life a living hell in terms of just the sheer number of applications that will be out there, the sheer amount of data that is not governed, that you have to somehow account for, right? This is where the agents are just going to be coming into play. What else happens? Autonomous, action-oriented architectures and systems, right? I think it's the logical extreme. Today we build systems for analytics. Today we build systems to get actionable insights. I think actionable insights are complete horseshit to begin with. And the thing is, if you have systems that can take action, then build systems that take actions and do the actions that you're going to take anyway. I learned this when building real-time systems 10 years ago. Whereas, like, because these big companies kept asking me for, like, can we get real-time reports? And I was like, if I gave you a report in real time, what would you do with that? Like, how are you going to do that? You're going to sit there, have somebody sit there, watch every nanosecond of this report to get an update on something, and you're going to, like, look for an outlier? Just take the action. So I think what's going to happen more is, like, autonomous, action-oriented systems is what we're going to be managing and building. It's not just about reports. I think dashboards are great. I also feel like, who feels like anyone reads the dashboards they make today? Exactly, right? So, although it's kind of funny, when I saw text-to-SQL come out, the question was, probably 80-90% of the questions that you're asking are already in the dashboard that nobody looked at. So you're going to tell me, like, you're there to type into a chatbot to get maybe the answer, maybe not, because text-to-SQL hallucinates still. But I thought it was funny because everyone's like, well, we can just ask all the edge cases. I'm like, yeah, but the main drivers of your business, if you aren't paying attention to those, like, why do you care about the edge cases? Right? So anyway, that's a bit of a rant there. But you're talking about, not just dashboard anymore. So, action-oriented architectures, strategic collaboration with AI and agents, right? All of us are doing that probably now. We're going to be doing that more in the future. And again, taking automated actions. I think streaming is going to be the norm. In this kind of system, it has to be. You have hundreds of thousands of agents potentially running, or millions, working on data stochastically, non-deterministically. It has to be real time. There's no other way for it to work, which means the systems have to be able to operate in real time. There was a really good Berkeley paper that just came out about AI overlords and next generation agentic architectures that you should read. It came out maybe 2 weeks ago with Matisse Saharia and others. But that points to a new architecture where things, you have to have memory of agent behavior and what it saw and the state and so forth. The cutting edge paper, go check it out. But I mean, we're just at the very beginning of thinking through these next generation architectures. We're at the very beginning of thinking through what is the next generation of data that you need for these systems. Again, it's not just rows and columns anymore. And it's probably not just the data that we have. The data we have today is made for humans, right? What does data look like when it's made for something else, right? Where agents and robots, and I'm talking physical robots now, need to be able to describe, in their own semantic way, actions that it took, or things that it needs to do, or tasks. This is a very open-ended question right now. We have not figured this out, and this gets me to the punchline of this whole rant. For decades, I feel like we've been working on some iteration of yesterday's problems, of yesterday's solutions, right? My good friend Bill Inman, he came up with the data warehouse, I think as early as 1983, he said. That's a long time ago. That's a full-grown adult with kids and maybe grandkids at this point, right? That was a whole generation ago. Data warehousing, right? Big data, that's 20 years old. More than that. We're still fighting yesterday's battles, with yesterday's tools and practices and so forth. I still see people arguing about Kimball, and whether we should do star schema or whether we should do one big table. And it misses the entire point that the world, again, is shifting before our very eyes, underneath our feet, and we're all collectively staring off into this void together. And the takeaway is that every one of you can build this future right now. The reset button has been hit. Everyone is on equal footing right now. Every single one of you is on equal footing. Nobody has an advantage right now. And so what I'd urge you is, if you're tired of working on just yesterday's stuff, legacy systems, legacy that, legacy this, it's like, you have a chance to change this. This opportunity doesn't happen this often. To me, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I brought up the internet earlier, right? That was a fun time. I was around for the beginning of that. I feel like this eclipses the potential of the internet, actually. Right? I was excited about that. I was making websites when I was, in the 90s when I was a kid. I saw the potential of that, and I feel the potential of this is much, much greater. But the really cool thing is, all of you have the capabilities to not just think about solutions now. You have the ability to actually write code or describe the code you want written and build these systems. You have the opportunity to interrogate AI and ask AI what it wants to look, what the systems it needs. A really trippy thing you should do is actually go to your favorite LLM, or many of them, and ask it, if you were to design an architecture from the ground up and a data model from the ground up for what you need, for what agents need, you should try this. It's trippy what it comes back with. It is nothing like what we have today. It's nothing like what we have today. It's very, very different. You should do it right now. Do it right now. Everyone, pull out your phones and ask, what architecture would you design for agents, and what data model? Some of the things I came back with, right? Like real time, like what was it? Like a semantic layer, but in real time, and it's a graph, and it's a bunch of other stuff, and but it operates at such a scale and a speed that like we don't have the systems for it today, right? But this is somebody could build this in this room right now, right? Even a prototype of it. So that's why I vibe code a lot. Actually, when I have Cloud Code running, it's building these systems so I can check them out, right? But everyone has. When I said equal footing, all of you have the same tools I do. All of you have the same tools that like everybody else does, except maybe researchers at OpenAI and stuff. But so let me finish with this this article here. There's a quote in this really good blog called Works on My Machine. And this guy had an article the other day called The Only Skill That Matters Now, right? So he was talking about basically how hockey is really about knowing how to skate, right? And right now, knowing how to use AI is knowing how to skate. And here, let me just read the final part here. It's a few paragraphs. He said, here's the brutal, uncomfortable, urgent, true thing. If your company isn't giving you the tools to learn to skate, like Claude Code, API credits, time to experiment with AI coding, and so on, you're not actually employed. You're in hospice. They're just keeping you comfortable while you're becoming obsolete. You won't be replaced by AI. That's the wrong fear. You'll be replaced by someone who learned to skate when you were still arguing about whether the ice is real, right? It's important to find a company that gets it, that throws money at making you faster, that understands we're not playing hockey anymore. We're playing something new, where the rules change mid-game and not only constant acceleration. Or don't. Stand there in your street shoes, explain to everybody how you've been coding for 20 years, and these kids with AI tools don't understand real programming. The puck doesn't care about your experience. It's already zipped by you while you're reading the sentence, right? That hit home. That came out last week. So I'd urge all of you, again, this is your time. And times like this don't come around that often. You have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create a new future, the new future of data engineering, new future of whatever field you want to be in. Shit, pick a field you're not even in. You can probably do that too. So that's what's kind of cool about this. You can just invent whatever you want. But now's the time to invent new ways of doing things, right? I think AI can free us from a lot of toil, and I think a lot of the boring shit we've been doing at our jobs forever. But we need to be focused, right? So add value, but reinvent the industry. Reinvent it. The time is yours. So I got 2 minutes left. If anyone has a question. Yes. Oh, is there a mic? Right. He's walking to you. Well, they won't hear you. It's pretty loud here. Hi, right here. Sorry.
Thank you. Wonderful talk. The question that I have is, most problems that I encounter are the fact that business is not aligned with data. So once we solve the problem of generating results that make sense to us, how far can we push that up the chain towards actually thinking if the problems that business thinks they should be solving are the actual correct ones?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and obviously I don't have the time in a minute to answer this, but I think maybe to indirectly answer a thread of your question, and maybe one of the root causes of it, you're talking about organizational behavior issues, right? I think one of the things you should keep on your radar is this notion, we all think of org charts right now, organizational charts. What I suspect is going to happen is agents are actually going to completely make that orthogonal, where we're talking about work charts. And I think the org charts of yesterday are actually going to go away in the next 20 years, once old leadership dies. So I think that's I think that's actually how you solve it, is you keep things focused on the work. But if you think about it, what is the purpose of having departments when you have tasks that just do things that cut across departments? It doesn't make any sense. And so I think so that doesn't answer your question how to solve your direct problem. Yell at your boss or rage quit or something. I'm kidding. Just say AI is going to take your job, man. You're doomed. But no, I mean I think long term though the question will answer itself, just with the sheer gravity of this thing. If you look at what's happening in American companies now, I have 16 seconds. American companies, at least a lot of companies are flattening out. They're getting rid of management, right? I think it's only going to continue, and you won't need, your boss will he'll be doing something else soon. So I don't know. Anyway, on that cheery note, thank you.